Let's work on the last user story of issue 1. Delete an artifact API endpoint. Or to be more specific, delete an artifact by ID. This API is pretty simple. In this case, the client is sending an HTTP delete request with only one thing, the path parameter artifact ID, indicating which artifact we want to delete. This is the successful response. True, 200, delete success, data is null. If the artifact ID provided by the front end does not exist in the database, the server will reply a 404 response. Let me toggle over to IntelliJ. First, let's create a handler method in artifact controller to handle this delete request. Public result delete artifact. Here, we're going to use @delete mapping to annotate this handler method. And the URL will be API version 1 artifacts artifact ID. This is the same as find artifact by ID and update artifact. So here we need to bind the path parameter to a formal parameter. String artifact ID. And we need to annotate this formal parameter using @path variable. Then the controller delegates to the artifact service object. Let's go to here. After update method, let's create a service method called delete. Void. There's no need to return anything. Delete. And here, the formal parameter will be string artifact ID. Next, let's follow the red, green, and refactor TDD approach and create a test method for delete. @test void test delete success. For deletion, similar to update, we need to first find by ID to make sure we can find an artifact with the provided ID. If found, we can delete. Otherwise, we're going to throw an exception. But in this case, let's only focus on the success scenario, which is if found. So let's get to it. We're going to follow given, when, and then steps. So in given, let's prepare a fake artifact that represents the artifact to be deleted. Let me copy some data from the previous test case. Then we need to mark the behavior of the artifact repositories find by ID method and delete by ID method. Given artifact repository dot find by ID, and this is ID, it will return this found artifact. This is the artifact to be deleted. And of course, we have to put it in an optional. Next, let's mark the behavior of artifact repositories delete by ID. Now, this is a little bit different because the repositories delete by ID method does not return anything. So we have to use another method called do nothing. It's also from Marketo. Do nothing dot when artifact repository dot delete by ID. So delete by ID is a method in artifact repository. Let me copy here, paste. So basically it means once this method gets called, do nothing. Okay, next, let's invoke the service.delete. Artifact service.delete. And let's pass in the ID. Since delete is not returning anything, we don't have to assign the result to a variable. Now, in the then part, or the assertion part, we only need to verify that delete by ID gets called once. So let me copy this, paste here, but this time is delete by ID. Okay, that's it. Let's launch the test case. It will fail because this one does nothing. As you can see here, at this moment, repository.delete by ID is not called at all. Okay, so let's go ahead and implement the delete method in the service. Right. Step 1, let's try to find if this ID exists or not. This dot repository dot find by ID. I'm going to pass this artifact ID to it. Get. So this is the happy path. And then we can invoke this dot artifact repository dot delete by ID. Because if line 49 does not throw exception, that means the artifact is found. So we can safely call delete by ID. Okay. And this is a happy path. So let's run this test case again. And it passed. Okay, it's very simple. Because all it needs is to call this delete by ID exactly once. So it's pretty easy to pass. Next, let's consider the unhappy path. Test delete not found. So let me copy this test case. Paste. And let's change the name to not found. So this time, we do not have to have this artifact object. So given find by ID, and here we return optional, let me delete this, dot empty. That means not found, right? So the repository is returning an empty optional. So here, there's no need to mark the behavior of delete by ID because this will throw exception and we don't have an opportunity to get to line 50. All right. In the when and then steps, we're expecting an artifact not found exception. So let me cut this and assert throws. We're expecting artifact not found exception class. And then the second parameter will be a lambda expression. Just put it here. Okay. And here we're going to change it to verify find by ID gets called exactly once. So only one exception is thrown. So let me run the test case. It failed. So we're expecting artifact not found, but actually we got no such element exception. That's thrown by this .get. Right? Okay. Right here. Now, next, let's fix this. Let's go ahead and refactor the code to handle the not found scenario. Okay, so instead of using .get, here should really be dot or else throw. And it takes a lambda expression, new artifact not found exception, and then we're going to pass the artifact ID to it. Okay, so it looks like we do not need this part. Okay. All right. All right, next, let's go ahead and test again, and hopefully we'll pass. Good, it passed. Next, let's move on to test controller. Let's create a test method. Test delete artifact. Success. Given, when, and then. So the given is pretty simple. Just do nothing. Dot when this dot artifact service dot delete. For example, we're deleting the first artifact. Okay. Next, let's simulate the HTTP delete request. Let me copy one from here. Paste here. Let's change this to delete. The URL is okay. And we don't need this because we're not sending any JSON. We don't need this. But we're accepting, we means the client, right? The client is accepting the application JSON format. Okay, so make sure you're happy. Add exception. So the flag should be true. And the status code should be success. And the message should be delete success. The data should be empty. Good. So very simple. Let's launch it. It will fail. Okay, it fails. It says same problem. JSON cannot be null or empty. Okay. Now, how do we implement this? It turns out there's only one line of code. So this dot artifact service dot delete, and that's it. So it's very similar to find by ID, artifact ID. It's similar but simpler because we don't have to do conversion, right? We don't need to convert artifact to artifact DTO. And we just need to return new result, true, status code dot success, and the message would be delete success, and that's it. If you remember that there are two constructors in the result. One has only 3 parameters, and the other one has 4. Okay, in this case, we're using the 3 one. Okay. So let's test again. It passed. Now, in the refactor phase, or in the refactor step, let's consider the unhappy path. So what I would do is, let's copy and paste this. Okay. And let's call this test delete artifact arrow with non-existent ID. Okay, in this case, here is how we define the behavior of service.delete. We want this delete to throw an exception when it gets called. Since service.delete returns nothing, the return type of delete is void, the syntax is a little bit different. And here is how we do it. Do throw new artifact not found exception. Here I'm going to pass this ID dot when this dot artifact service dot delete. Okay, so it's pretty long, but I think it's understandable. When service.delete gets called, throw this exception. Now next, let's modify this mock MVC request. So in this case, this is supposed to be false, and this should be not found. And here, let's go up and copy. It should be this one. Okay, right here. Paste. And data is supposed to be empty. Good. So let's run it. And the test case should pass. Okay, failed. Let's see what happened. Okay, again, a very silly problem. It's supposed to be 1. Run again. Okay, it passed. Very good. Next, let's do some integration testing. Let me close this, and launch the Spring Boot project. Okay, so Spring Boot starts on 8080. Very good. Let's first toggle over to H2 console and then go to Postman to do the integration testing. Localhost 8080 and click connect. Artifact, run. Okay, so we have 6 artifacts. So for example, let's say we're going to delete the first one, Deluminator. Let's toggle over to Postman. And let's create a new request. Let's call this delete an artifact. This is an HTTP delete request. And here, perfect. Yeah, that's the ID. Okay, then I'm going to click send. We get true 200 delete success. Then let's go to find all artifacts. We can actually test here and find all artifacts. Okay, find all artifacts. Now we have, now the delimiter is gone, right? We have Elder Wand, Invisibility Cloak, Marauder's Map, Sword, Gryffindor, and Resurrection Stone. So the delimiter is gone. Then let's go back to H2 database to verify. So right now we have delimiter. If I run it again, it's gone. Okay, so that means our delete API endpoint has been done correctly. There is a small issue here that annoys me. If you look at the request mapping URLs of each handler method in this controller class, API v1 artifacts, API v1 artifacts, API v1 artifacts, right, so on and so forth, they all share the same base URL. Can we extract it to one place and have those handler methods share it? Yes. So what we can do here is we can define a class level annotation called @request_mapping. And the base URL will be API v1 artifacts. Then we can remove the prefix here. Okay, make sure we still have the slash because this one does not have a slash. Okay, so this one can be totally deleted. Okay. Okay. This one is gone as well. Okay, so the final URL for this endpoint is really a combination of this class level request mapping URL and whatever I write here. Okay, so this version is equivalent to what you have seen before, but it's just simpler. And I highly recommend that you use this class level request mapping right here in your future project. To make sure that this change will not mess up my code, so let me make sure I run all the test cases here. Okay, so right click, run tests in this package. As you can see, we already have 17 tests written. Okay, they all passed. Perfect. That gives me a peace of mind. Although testing cannot show the absence of bugs, but at least the test will give me a peace of mind, as I said. If you find a bug, feel free to leave a comment below so I can add more test cases. Okay. So we're done. Okay. We just finished the delete an artifact API endpoint, which corresponds to the last user story of issue 1. So let's select, check it. We're done with all the 5 user stories in this issue 1. In other words, we have finished this big issue 1, artifact CRUD. Next, let's commit and push the code to the GitHub repo. I will see you in the next video.